there. That's why the C-51 and C-52 were introduced last year. They're trying to do it to diffuse what we know, that they don't have current legislative authority to do what they're doing, and they're acting as gangsters and criminals. That's why they're doing C-6. That's why they're going to do C-10. They're trying to create a legislative coloring that they can justify their out-of-control actions. Now, politics in this country. How many people in this room, by a show of hands, are actively involved in the last 3 months in politics? Okay, we got a problem. Whether you like politics or not, it rules your life every moment of every day. If you don't become involved, and you need to go to my table, get the memberships, and get involved, and I'll explain how we do this. So think of the numbers. 34 million people roughly, 308 federal ridings, 4 elected parties. Parties generally only have 1 or 2% of the population, by the way. So we are allowing, all of you in the room, which is about 95%, are allowing that 1 to 2% to rule your lives. It's that simple. If you don't play the game, if you don't sit there at the table, you're not going to have a say. And you're always going to lose. Most existing parties at the federal riding level, at best, have 50 to 100 members on an average year by year. So you think of what that means. And within that, there's usually a 3-person, 2-3 people that control the local riding. There's usually another 6 or 7 backroom controllers that aren't visible. So you're allowing 10 people per riding in 2 major parties, which is only 6,120 people or so here. I'll show you the numbers. You're allowing these 10 people in the 2 parties to completely govern this country and do anything they want. That's the bottom line. Politics affects every day of our lives. All politics is ultimately about our communities and the local area. There are generally 2 political parties. The top 2 parties, in fact, control the entire country, and they control who becomes the MP, and they largely control what the MP does or doesn't do. The MPs don't look at the legislation. I did a survey. I asked the MPs that allowed C6 to pass quickly how many of them actually read. Do you know that 80% of the MPs or more never read C6 before they passed it? Isn't that disgusting? Why are we paying them big bucks? They're not doing the job I want them to do. If you do a simple calculation, 10 people from Liberals, 10 people from Conservatives. In this province, it would be 10 from the Bloc and 10 from the Liberals, or a mixture now. Approximately 6,160 people currently control the entire political decisions affecting 34 million. In today's society, too many people view, I do not want to be involved in politics. And you know the price we pay for that. They count on you not being involved. They know that's your historic patterns. The major party agendas always seem to be more or less the same. They want to stay in power at any cost. I've had a number of senior people in the Conservatives tell me off the record as a friend in recent times, I won't name anything, that they're so interested in re-election that they're really not paying much attention to the issues. And we've had such a disaster with the power focus. We all are aware that the current political parties tend to all be controlled at the end of the day by the same people. There's not a whole lot of difference, and they often behave the same way. Now think of what I'm saying. In the US, they have a directly elected president. And you saw the excitement and process. Not that that always works well, that's another story. They have a directly elected Senate. They have a directly elected Congress, similar to our Parliament. But they elect their governors, which are equivalent to our premiers, which we don't do directly. They elect their district attorneys, which we don't do, which controls the legal system. They elect the sheriffs, which we don't do, which controls the local enforcement of the legal system. They have standing grand juries, which we abolished largely in Canada, which is a mistake. Because when you take the sovereignty in God and the sovereignty in us as children of God, the only thing that overrides our individual sovereignty is either God or a jury of our peers in our legal system. A judge doesn't have the authority over us that they attempt to have. And I can give you more details about that in the new book I'm writing. The federal government is just a maze of sole and aggregate corporations. How many people in the room know what I mean by sole corporation? Okay. The two best known examples are the office of the Pope and the office of the Monarch of England. Okay? It's an ancient, where the office is in fact the corporation. Now, you may not know it, but the Governor General's office in Canada by legislation, if you go to your Google and you look up the Governor General Act 1985, you'll find that the Governor General's office in Canada became a sole corporation in 1985. If you go to paragraph 2 of that legislation, you'll find that the Governor General has the right to designate any person in the government representing the Crown as a sole corporation. So we are dealing with a massive maze of hundreds. When you talk about the federal government, we're dealing with hundreds of corporations, agencies, and things that they've created like a shell game. And my mother taught me very early on, anybody who's being funny with money or trying to confuse you is usually after your wallet. Okay, let's take a sad look at the Canadian system. We have 15 heads of state in Canada. Think of that. We have one monarch, one governor general, 13 provincial and territorial lieutenant governors. None of them are elected by the general people. The prime minister is elected by one lousy riding with 20 or 30,000 people. None of us have a say who our prime minister is. Is that not a ridiculous system? Would we pay for all of them? Think of the money we're wasting. We can cut the money in half. Maybe we should put it into a guaranteed minimum wage, which would be essential to keep people from starving to death in our country. Something I don't believe should happen in this country to anybody. There's no elected Senate. Again, now, I'll tell you though, the quality of the senators we have, I don't want anybody to reflect here. There are wonderful medical doctors, there are wonderful pharmacists, there are wonderful senators and MPs. I am not reflecting on the quality of the people. I am talking about the structure is wrong, and I don't feel that as a taxpayer it's serving my interests or giving me value for my money. So I don't want anybody to take any of my remarks personally. I'm here for positive, constructive reasons. Okay, no elected Senate, no elected Parliament. The individual MP really does not have any ability to represent their individual majority constituents. They got what they call a party whip, and they mean that. The party whip tells them how to vote. And all 4 parties operate that way. So don't let them fool you that any of them are any different, because push comes to shove, the money interests control all 4 parties, and their whip is used as the means of doing that to enforce it. There's no elected sheriffs, no elected district attorney, no elected premier, no standing juries. Now, very important in Canada, unlike the US, there's no open and transparent appointment process for senators, judges, or any other public service. The Prime Minister's office makes all the appointments in this country. They do it by cell phone. Hi, Joe, I like you. I like your viewpoints. Would you like to make $200,000 a year for the rest of your life? Good, I got a Senate position for you. I really appreciate your support in the last 2 decades. That's how it's done. Do you really want your government to run that way? Or would you prefer to have it where you can fire your MP and hire your MP and hold your MP accountable, and you really do have direct representative democracy, and you really do have rule of law? So there's structural problems that there's easy solutions to, but they don't want solutions. Now, contrary to the federalist view, the Canadian federal is just that. It's a corporation. Now, what you may not know, Sean Buckley talked about the 1867 British North American Act. That was a private member's bill. It wasn't even a government bill of the UK Parliament that was snuck through the UK Parliament in rather suspicious circumstances. It was inconsistent with what the Canadian leaders had been meeting with and discussing. They were double-crossed. And anything that I say today, if you want a binder or two, I'm notorious in Ottawa for binders or two of backup evidence on everything I say. So if any of you are curious, most of it's in English, but I can provide backup for anything I'm stating here today. I can't, now, and something else is that was the Articles of Incorporation for the federal corporation. Okay, that sets out in sections 91 and 92 the division of power, which they all ignore at both levels. It's called, technically speaking, our government corporation is called the Dominion of Canada, and as far as I'm aware, that's still its legal name to this day. Interesting, eh? They work under aliases. The aliases they use are Canada, Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Canada, the Crown. Now, how many people in the room know that Canada as a corporation is listed on the U.S. Securities Exchange? Oh, okay. Interesting. Anyway, here, any of you can go into the securities and put Canada in, and you'll see we're treated just like any other corporation. We have to file our returns on this. To me, Health Canada is the most powerful bureaucracy in Canada. It is more powerful than the Prime Minister, the Parliament, the Senate, and currently the courts. It is actively aided and protected in its criminal activities against humanity by the clerks of the Privy Council and the Deputy Ministers of Justice. I can prove that. I've actually sued the Deputy Minister of Justice. That's one of the reasons the law societies don't like me very much. It rules by fear as a very effective bully. My nature has always been to stand up and challenge bullies, whether it's dealing with myself personally or others. I have never liked bullies, and I've never stood by and let anybody else be harmed. I've